Jeff, it's good to be back with you again on Mindshare Mondays. We were talking not long ago about just some of the nuances between large companies and small companies. And I'm entertained by the fact that I've been fortunate to do a lot of events and engagements around prospecting and social selling. And people are always quick to point out, oh, hey, you work for a large company, so it's easy, it's easy for you to say that, but I work for such and such. And I'm always quick to point out that I cut my teeth on what is called social selling at a much smaller organization. In fact, a very small consulting firm, which is where I learned how to do a lot of these types of outreach, cold outreach, et cetera. So that's just one element of this, but we were talking about some of the differences between these large companies and smaller companies. And I'd be interested in your take, because I know you've got some experience in both. I've got some experience in both. What are some of the things, some of the nuances that you've seen in your career? And what are things that people that are watching today should and could take into consideration if they're trying to navigate in either or?
Yeah, well, so I've never worked at a company that's quite the size of Microsoft, which is where you work. So the companies I've worked for are on the smaller side overall. I did work for one that was a publicly traded company that had an IPO. But for me, it's really about different levels of autonomy. In a smaller company, there's more of a mindset that you need to figure things out on your own. And that can be exciting for people. They like the autonomy of going out and figuring things out on their own, but also the lack of process and the lack of resources can frustrate them, because if you need, for example, just a simple piece of marketing collateral, that might not exist. You might have to go make it or get somebody to help you make it. So you have to be good at, trying to figure things out on your own. But if you like that, then that can be a good thing. One thing that I notice is the companies I've worked for, the bigger they are, there's a lot more process in place. There's a lot more rules to follow. And in some ways, it leads to the opposite outcome. The ball is in your hands a little bit less, because you need to go to different people to get certain things. And so you start to become a little more dependent upon other people's schedules and their ability to execute than your own. And that can be a good thing, because if there's a good process in place, then there's a little bit less on your shoulders. But it can also be a tough thing, because if somebody's not maybe working as quickly as you need them to, you need to figure out a diplomatic way to get what you need. And I would say actually that being a people person makes you better in a bigger company, because people who can navigate like the complexities of dealing with others and getting things done as a team, that's more needed. So that's my 2 cents from my own experience. But you work at a very big company, one of the biggest on the planet. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
No, that's a great call out, Jeff. I think you hit the nail on the head as far as the elements of process and sometimes lack thereof in relatively small organizations. I've worked for 2 very, very large companies, and I've worked for some small ones. And a couple of those smaller organizations that actually served larger companies. So I was privy to, kind of that, small company feel, but obviously had to answer to a larger organization. And then I've also worked for a small consultant firm where it was, really I was attempting to set up conversations with senior executives, and was quite successful in cold outreach and leveraging some of the tools that I use today to prospect in doing so. You're spot on. The difference is, if you work for a small organization, you often have that autonomy piece. You have that ability to operate very quickly. But I look back and I realize too that, with the discipline that I hope I've developed throughout my career, that there's a lot of benefit. Recently I wrote an email, and it was a really important email, and it was to an executive. And, in the old days, I would have just fired off this email. But the strength of a team around you at a large organization is what the real benefit is. And I think no matter who you are or how good you are, I think you have to rely on the benefits of working at a large organization. I'm surrounded by absolutely brilliant people. And so to be able to figure out, okay, who are the people that I need to liaise with, what are the right relationships that I need to invest in, because I literally had this email looked over in the chat by 6 different people before I even sent it. And I would have never done that previously. And trust me, I've had many opportunities, specifically at smaller organizations, where I was the one. I would, put these things together and I'd, shoot them off one shot. I did very little editing, but we benefit so much by being surrounded by these other folks. Now, I think that it's also a mindset as to how you approach the benefits, the pros and cons of a small company versus a large company, because a lot of people say, my gosh, this company's so big that I can't get anything done, or whatever it is. And I always have to remind people, like, hey, there's a lot of benefits to working for a very large organization, because that's why you have some of the benefits, the resources at your disposal, and there is a big strength at having a brand name logo on your back. However, I've also been on the other side of the coin where I had no brand name logo and I had to build my own brand. I had to add value of my own merit. And a lot of that is, could be research, intel, relationships that you may have already developed that you can leverage on a new potential client's behalf. So, I enjoy elements of both, right? And not everything's going to be perfect, but, again, yes, there's some things that have to go through many, many, many steps of a process, but there's a valid reason for that. And so I think sometimes we have to, maybe quell our immediate frustration, kind of that reactionary frustration over either one. My goodness, like there's no process here. This place is like the Wild West if I work for a small company, or my gosh, like why is this taking so long if I work for a large company? And that's why I think it's very clear either way. It's important either way that you're very clear with your expectations, that you're clear with how you communicate with others in your organization, and that you leverage all the resources at your disposal, because there is a great benefit sometimes to being able to get something done very quickly. If I work for a small company and I can approve something from a marketing standpoint in an hour as opposed to in a month. And then on the flip side of that, if I work for a large organization, having the processes and the trust checks and the people around you that can just enhance the value that you're able to bring, being able to sell something that you truly believe in, that has a lot of quality and rich value behind it. So, I think great topic, Jeff. I think this is something that a lot of folks grapple with, and I would tell anybody that's thinking about, my gosh, I wish I worked for a larger company, or my gosh, I wish I worked for a smaller company. Hone in that mindset, look at some of the pros, gravitate toward the resources and the value that's at your disposal either way. And, there are a lot of things going in your favor.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree.